The presenters are Mark Kinney and Rumyana Hristova from Evangel University. Before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping notes. Live captioning is available during this presentation. You can toggle this on and off using the attendee controls at the bottom of your screen. This session will be recorded and provided on the conference website following the conference. Please enter all questions into the Q&A box, and we will do our best to answer them at the end. Okay, I will turn it over to Mark and Rumyana.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Can you see us well? Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Lindsay, is it okay?
Yes.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for coming to our presentation. I'm Rumyana Hristova, the Catalogue and Outreach Librarian at Evangel University. And
my name is Dr. Mark Kinney, and I'm a missionary in residence teaching here at Evangel in the undergraduate program.
So first, I'll start by giving you, providing you with the plan for today for our presentation. So what we're going to do today is first we'll give you a brief overview of Evangel University and the current state of Open Educational Resources Initiative at our campus. Then Dr. Mark Kinney will tell us about his teaching experience at Evangel. Then we'll touch briefly on open pedagogy, non-disposable assignments, and Creative Commons licenses. Then I'll show you the repositories and tools for open access publications and those that we have used for our project. And then in the end, we'll provide you with some examples of student coursework that was published openly. So first, briefly about our university. Evangel University is a small private Christian university, and we have quite a lot of international students on our campus. And we have a program of Intercultural Studies, which is oriented, the emphasis is on Christian missions. So students that would like to take those courses, they enroll in this program, and the course that we are featuring today is part of that program of Intercultural Studies. And why do we do OER? I believe that knowledge should be free, and that means that we should not be tying up ideas and knowledge in proprietary systems. We should be finding ways to share ideas and knowledge to make the world a better place. I chose this quote by the founder of OpenStax because it reflects very accurately my personal viewpoint on OER, which was shaped by two key events. The first time I heard about open educational resources was when I attended the American Library Association conference in the summer of 2018. I attended a presentation made by a business professor who was talking about the project he undertook with his students to improve on a textbook. He had chosen a textbook which he wasn't totally satisfied with, and he realized it needs to be improved, and he decided to give the task to his students. So he collaborated with his students, and the end result was a new edition of this textbook, which was published openly. So I was just totally amazed. I have never heard of such a collaboration between faculty and students and publishing a new version of a textbook. I was just impressed. And I wanted to probably, if it's possible, to do something to bring this experience that I saw on that conference, to bring it to our campus here. And then the other key event for me was later this year, a documentary was published which I watched. It's called Paywall, The Business of Scholarship. I highly recommended it. If you have not watched it, you can Google it. You can find it on the internet, and we've provided link to it in our bibliography at the end of the slides. It's just it gives you the big picture of the publishing, the practices of the publishing industry, and the whole movement of open access, why it started. It has interviews with insiders in the academia and the publishing industry, and it's just the information you can learn from there is not like you hear it from any other place. It's just an eye-opener. I highly recommend this documentary, and it solidified my position on open educational resources for sure. Then how do we do OER? Successful OER initiatives do not need to be massive, resource-intensive, or exhaustive. They, however, require strategic planning, targeted approaches, collaborative leadership and outreach, and goal-oriented advocates. I've heard statements like, well, OER is done only at big state universities, but small Christian universities, they just don't do it. And well, the fact that we're doing this presentation today and the experience that we are sharing with you just disproves statement like this. And we would like to encourage those of you who may need such encouragement not to give up, or for those who are new, to introduce them to the world of open pedagogy and the possibilities it provides for both faculty and students. And I just want to emphasize how important the collaborative work is between librarians and faculty. And we librarians need to be the proactive part. We need to go and find faculty where they are and start those conversations with them. It's this outreach to faculty is instrumental. It's key for the success of such initiative. At least that has been my experience. And then the current state of OER at our university, we have about 28 faculty members who are a mixed group. We have full-time faculty, adjuncts, emeriti, and it's a totally grassroots movement. It's totally up to the faculty if they decide to change their textbook and decide using something else like open textbook. And then I have also created an open educational research guide on the library website where everybody can go and read about this movement. There's plenty of information there to learn about it. And part of it is also, there's a page there where you can see the current names of the faculty who are using OER in the courses that they're teaching with OER. And I've provided also the links to those new textbooks that they're using. So it's transparent and visible for everyone who would like to see what we're doing. And currently, total savings from the usage of open educational resources is about $800,000. It's not an accurate number, but that's the data I have because I rely on faculty to supply that information to me. And we have a current champion of OER. This is Dr. Kevin King, who teaches at the kinesiology department. And the course he teaches with OER is Wellness Proficiency. This is a freshman course with compulsory for every student, and so far he has saved $186,000, which is quite it's a significant number. But today, the faculty in spotlight is Dr. Mike Kinney, who is the missionary in residence at Evangel University. And I should clarify for those who are not familiar, missionary in residence, these are faculty who teach at our campus, but they come straight from the missionary field. These are former missionaries that's what they did in their career, and they're just invaluable resource for students who will may intend planning to become Christian missionaries. And Dr. Mike Kinney has lived in Argentina for 35 years. So he's just such an incredible resource for our students. And I'll just hand it over to him now so that he can tell us about his experience.
Yes, I'm a novice at using open educational resources because I had no idea that it even existed. When I left Argentina in 2021, I came to Evangel for a 2-year assignment. And as a missionary, I relied on my background in cultural anthropology as an undergraduate student, and I applied all of those principles, both as a pastor in the inner city of Los Angeles, which was a different cultural context for me before going overseas, and of course, adjusting to life in Argentina, the language and the culture. Unfortunately, I didn't have my anthropology book with me anymore. I had to kind of remember what I had learned from memory. But here at Evangel, I was invited to develop a course in Intercultural Studies on enculturation and spiritual development across cultures. And so my goal as a professor was to offer the best training for my students who may end up being missionaries someday. I want them to develop the best cross-cultural sensitivities that they can. And so naturally, you want to offer the best material, the best textbook on the subject of cultural anthropology. And as I was designing the course, I was shown a sample book called The Mirror of Humanity by McGraw-Hill. And it was already in its 13th edition, which is understandable because it's a field. Anthropology is a field where it's continually being upgraded. But the price was $180. And I thought, wow, that's pretty pricey. I'm just going to put that in my syllabus and expect students to go out and fork over $180 to get the textbook. But then I found out from the librarian here that there are open educational resources. And in fact, there was one in my field. And I discovered this book called Discovering Cultural Anthropology, which is exactly what I was looking for. My initial thought, and probably some people are thinking, well, if it's free, it's probably low quality. But when I looked through the textbook, I was amazed at the quality. It was as good or better than the textbooks I had been looking at and searching through, and it had all of the material I wanted. And the students I knew would get all of the information, all of the knowledge that I would have shared from a $180 book from the open educational resource. So I thought, well, that's a no-brainer. I'm just going to put that in my syllabus, and the students can access the book for free. And I can assign chapters that they can read. And then I discovered that the book also offered interactive features. It has flashcards to review fieldwork. There's you can do a crossword puzzle. There's different interactive activities that go along with the book. And so I knew I also substitute teach in the public school system, and I see K through 12 students on their Chromebooks and doing a lot of assignments online where they have interactive features. And I realize that students are moving in that direction. Students are developing those studying habits. So I thought, well, why not offer a book to an undergraduate student that is interactive and informative, and also it can be updated very quickly. I know that in October of 2022, that's when I actually started in spring, in January of 23, but the book had just come out in October of 2022. And so I was using a new product and learning a new way to teach. And then already this year I'm teaching, and it was updated in February this year. So it's amazing that these resources can be edited and upgraded and improved very seamlessly and without any delays. You can just access the book and get the latest information that's available. So that makes it a very attractive product. And of course, it is free. So the students have been pretty amazed that they're getting this access to this product right away. And it involves a Creative Commons license where the original author is still honored in the process, but there's sharing that goes on. as the book is being adapted and edited and built upon. And even students can, if they're interested, they're actually able to contribute to the book in any updates. The cost savings to my students, I don't have that many students, but even the few students I have in 2 semesters, the savings is already totaled to $2,340, which is a considerable amount of money for students who are always strapped for finances. I like to compare open educational resource to the Tesla car. Most of my students, the car they would want to own is a Tesla. They can't afford it, but that's the car they want, because the Tesla, I understand, I don't own a Tesla, but I understand from Tesla owners that that car is continually being upgraded and improved at no cost to the driver. It doesn't matter what year you bought your Tesla. If the Tesla company issues a software upgrade that will improve an existing feature or introduce a new feature on the vehicle, you can upload that to your vehicle, and you now have the most recent Tesla. It'll do anything that the brand new Tesla coming off the line will do. So that's one of the attractions of the Tesla over a traditional automobile, is that new features can be added to that vehicle without changing the chassis or anything. So it's a great deal, because open educational resource is available for free for all time. There's no expiration date. The student can finish their studies at Evangel, go out onto the mission field, and if they want to consult the book again for some double checking on some issue in cultural anthropology, they can access the book for free on any device, on their cell phone, on an iPad, a computer. It's available to them. And every time they access it, they will get the most updated and edited version of it with all the new information. So it's a great deal. And hitchhiking on that image of the car, we want to put the student in the driver's seat. We want the student to have the experience, because OER goes hand in hand with open pedagogy. And there are different approaches you can take. In my case, I've replaced the textbook by using an open educational resource. There are other avenues you can follow in using or applying this approach, where knowledge consumption and knowledge creation are not separate, but parallel processes. As knowledge is co-constructed and contextualized, it's cumulative and iterative or duplicable. This is a quote from De Rosa and Giangiani in 2017. And I appreciate this concept, which was new to me. I'm a novice, as I explained, but I thought this is really interesting, that I can encourage my students to think in terms of not just consuming knowledge, but to become contributors, to become creators of knowledge as a result of taking this course. And I've applied some of that as a professor in a small way, taking some of the first steps, I would say, to getting used to using open educational resources. And it's been new for the students. Some of them have been a little reluctant to take me up on my invitation to actually think about publishing something as a result of the course. And that brings us to the idea, the concept of non-disposable assignments versus a disposable assignment. Normally and traditionally, a professor gives an assignment, a written assignment to a student, and they write an essay or something and submit it to the professor grades it, and then it goes to the paper shredder or the trash can because the exercise is over. And there's less meaning to that whole process. Whereas if you give a non-disposable assignment, you're challenging the student to write something that you're going to include in the syllabus on the module for the next group of students for the next time you teach the course. So they're going to actually chime in on something. They're writing not just for the professor, they're writing for a broader audience. They're writing something that's going to be published or publishable on a wider platform. The definition of a non-disposable or reusable assignment is one that may be published as an open resource, giving back to the greater community of knowledge. When students create an artifact that is shared publicly, they see the process as having greater worth and they put extra effort into it. This in turn can make the assignment more rewarding for us as instructors too, and strengthen academic integrity and provide examples for future students. So the student is not tempted to plagiarize when they're creating something that's going to be published. and it's going to be part of the module for the next group of students. Or it may be used beyond that. Even if they get used to doing this, they may want to provide an experience that can be used as part of the textbook itself, can be added to the case studies in the area that's talking about cultural anthropology. Yeah, I'm gonna, I wanted to mention one more thing about the fact that, what did we discuss earlier about the students being able to, the comparison of doing the work. I didn't share about what my students had produced yet, or am I doing that later?
Yes, yes.
I'll be doing
yeah,
that later. Okay,
yeah.
a little bit later, I'll share about what the students produce in my class and give you a sample of what can happen when the students are exposed to an open educational resource.
So I'll just jump in here real quick. As part of that process, at some point, I also visit the class of Dr. Kinney to familiarize students with the concept of open license, because as if they agree to have their work published, they need to sign a form in which they would relinquish their copyright to the university, where in case we want to share publicly their work. And so I had to briefly explain the concept of open license and Creative Commons licenses. But also I use this moment as a teachable moment to introduce students to the broader concept of open access and the whole open ecosystem, which involves open source, open science, open data, etc. So that is a really good moment where students can learn about this whole movement of open access, and it's really goes really well. So they are, usually they've never heard about it, so that's the first time they're introduced, and some of them may be hesitant when you tell them that they can publish their work in the open on the internet. It's available for a wider audience. Some of them are reluctant, but it's entirely voluntary. If they wish to have their work published, then we do it, and they sign this form, which we keep, and I have an example of that form in the bibliography later. You can see the link will be there, so you can use the form and adapt it to your context and circumstances if you need to do this. And it's that's my favorite picture of Creative Commons licenses. It's the feeling of freedom, like it is indeed real academic freedom. You have it with that open license, which gives so many opportunities, and you have the feeling of you're like on top of the mountain and you share your work with the rest of the world. And so the repositories and the tools that we have used for our projects, that's the Open Educational Resources Commons in our case, and the Mobius Hub, and the opportunity that we have through Mobius to join that hub, and as we have Evangel University group on the hub, and it's been a very beneficial for us, because we cannot pay the subscription. Usually other big universities use Pressbooks as a publishing platform, but we just cannot afford it. And we have this free tool, and I thought, why not use it? And it's a low learning curve. It's easy to use, and they have this open author tool there where you upload all your materials, and there's a really nice informative video about how to work with open author, which you can check on the Open Education Resources Commons website later if you want to. And I'll just show you the screen where you see. This is the text editor that comes with the open author. It has all these robust features with, you can upload video, images, mathematical formulas. And the latest feature they have added is accessibility checker. It checks your text for like people with disabilities. It makes sure that it's compliant with those standards. You can also add authors, and this is a great project for if you have student workers. They can work with this. You can assign that project to them. You can make them add them as authors, co-authors together with you, and that's what I did. Actually, I had a student worker last year, so he did all this work of uploading the Mark Kinney students' materials on the site, and it just worked great. I highly recommend it if you don't have the budget for anything more sophisticated. That's a great tool to use. And then now we'll show you a few examples. The first textbook that we had published on Open Education Resources Commons was a textbook called New Testament Theology of Discipleship and Ontology. That was published by Professor Deborah Gill just before she retired. But the case with her was that she had this textbook published as an ebook because these are master level. It's a master level course, so she had those essays by her students, which she thought were really good quality and they deserve to be published. So a few years ago, she published it as a text ebook. But then when I introduced her to this new opportunity, we had to publish it open. So she totally agreed, and she gave me the text files, and we converted the ebook into this new openly published book. So that's what it looks on the Commons. And it's then you have the views and how many people download it. You have statistics, how interactions with that text, and then it's primarily text. These are essays, primarily text. Let me see. So that's what it looks like. And then my student worker, I gave him the task to make some improvements. So that is his project. He took one of the essays from that anthology and he enhanced it with pictures, as you can see, and video. And he did a really good job. So these are the possibilities, the options, the functions that you have with the open author, what you can do with it. And now I'll hand it over again to Mark Kinney to tell us more about the module that he did with his students.
Yes, another advantage that I've discovered of open educational resources, they're available to the student on day one. In some cases, a student may have to wait on their loan to come through and they're not able to buy their books. They may be in class for 2 or 3 weeks without the textbook, and that affects the success of the performance of the student. So it's a very practical issue to be able to access the textbook from day one and have that advantage. And in my course, we got on the topic of culture shock. And we talked about that, and I invited the students to write an assignment about some experience they've had. Some of the students have been overseas before, or if they have been here in the States and met someone from overseas and experienced some element of culture shock, to write about that. And one of the gals wrote about her trip to Egypt and a culture shock experience. It was fascinating to me because I realized that I would not have experienced that because I wasn't a female, that she was having some gender issues in Egypt. And so I told her that I was going to include her essay as part of the module for the next group of students so that they could read about it. And her experience was on par with a case study in the textbook. So I told her, I said, this is good enough to be published and put in a book on cultural anthropology. So the student is very motivated to write from their own experience, realizing that it can be published. It can go to a wider audience than just beyond handing in an assignment to a professor. And I found that I enjoyed reading it, and she enjoyed writing it and seeing it included in the module for future students. Then we got on the topic of the image of God as the base of morality. And one of my students who likes to write, he wrote a short story, science fiction story on genetic engineering and how that affects or how that clouds the moral issue of the image of God in a human being. And it was a fascinating story. I enjoyed reading it. And he asked me to edit some of it for him and give him some points, and we worked together on it. And so now it's part of the module as well for future students to see what some student produced because he was inspired by the topic of the image of God in the human being. And it wasn't an assignment that he had to do. It was a voluntary thing, and it became a very fun, collaborative experience between the professor and student, and the other students enjoyed reading it as well. So it became a lot of fun. And then we got on the topic of the face of God, and we studied a painting by Emil Nolde, the German painter, Christ and the Children. It's one of the only paintings of Christ in the world of art that doesn't show his face. And so we had a discussion about the face of God, and one of the students painted a painting. I didn't assign it to her. She just voluntarily made this painting of a little girl sleeping and in Jesus's arms while she's asleep. And that I've put in the module as well, because the students are enjoying the concept of turning in an assignment that doesn't die on the professor's desk. It goes into the module for future students. And this just maybe a first step toward getting them to embrace the idea that students can contribute knowledge to the accumulating knowledge of a course. And like Wikipedia, you can go in there and add information to a topic. And we're having fun with this. I'm just new at this, but my students are slowly warming up to the idea that they can be learners and contributors simultaneously. Oh, yes. And our final exam was to produce a creed about answering God's call. And that creed is now a part of the module from last year's students. So this year, the students will be able to look at what was produced by the last year's class, and then they will produce a similar product for their final. And so it's an ongoing and building thing, which is a lot of fun for us. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, there's last year's students, and they enjoyed the free access to the book. They didn't have to buy a book, and they enjoyed the fact that it's easy and it's forever access from any device. And as I mentioned, they also benefited from access on day one. As soon as the semester began, they had that book, and we were off and running. And this is the group I have this year. And some of them do have a call to be missionaries, so they're enjoying the course and my experience from Argentina. And of course, the challenge to write about their experience. I have several students here that have one, the tall fellow in the back is from Greece, so he's actually from another culture. And we have people that have been to other cultures and are relating their experiences and writing about it. And so they will contribute toward future students that would take this course as well.
So thank you so much. That's all we had to tell you. If you have any questions, we are ready to answer those. And you can reach us at our emails if you want later on to share, reach out, just hear our email. So are there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Mark and Rumyana. We do have one question here in the Q&A. How are the contributions by students attributed in the course? How is attribution negotiated with students?
Let me show you. So I explained to them the concept of open license and open licensing, and this is the form that we produce for them to sign. First part is that they have to, if they want to have it published, they need to sign that they agree that they relinquish their copyright. But then the second part is if they want to choose an open license to assign such license to their work. So that's the form we give to them, and with an explanation, also further explanation for them to read, and the different kinds of licenses.
Yeah, there's options, different options to select from.
Yes, they can choose one of the 6 types of licenses. So they initial and sign that form and they give it back to us. And we'll have this copy in the references later on. You can use it and adapt it to, if you want to your circumstances. It will be in the references.
Okay, great. We have another question here. Do you have any plans for any other projects? Has this gotten other faculty excited? What's next?
Well, we hope that that's why we're doing this presentation. Maybe other faculty will watch and be inspired by this example. It's been such a great pleasure to work with Mark Kinney. He's just ideal collaborator. He's just been wonderful, and maybe he can say about
I've had
future plans.
a couple of colleagues approach me during the week and apologize that they had conflicts. They weren't going to be able to watch this presentation, but I told them, well, it's being taped. You can get the link and watch it later. But they were interested, so I'm encouraged that other faculty are going to hear my input, and maybe they'll look into open educational resources in their field, because it's a growing thing and there are more and more books becoming available to different on different topics for different courses. And I would certainly encourage any professor to look into it. If they've got a book that dovetails with what you're teaching, well, I would just get it. I mean, you're going to save your students a lot of money. They're going to have access the first day, and there's just so many advantages to it. It's kind of a no-brainer for me in my experience, but it's sometimes people are reluctant to see. I don't have the disadvantage of a lot of previous traditional teaching. I taught in Argentina in the Bible school, but not with Canvas or any of the systems I had to learn how to use here. So, and some people have been in the system a long time and they may be reluctant to make a switch. But when you look at the advantages, it's pretty overwhelming. I think it's the way to go. It's the wave of not just the future for us teaching, but I think the students are ready for this. This is something right up their alley and the way they like to study.
And like you mentioned, this transition from the high schools that it's
Right.
being used.
They're being conditioned to it. I see that as I substitute teach in the public school. And I see how the students are learning, and when they get done with high school, going to college, it's just going to be a seamless transition if college is using open educational resources. They'll be prepared for that.
And we have other projects on the way, but maybe at a later date we'll be able to do another presentation. But we do have more faculty here that have embraced the OER and they're reaping the benefits of it.
Okay, it looks like we do have another question here. How are contributions by students reviewed and evaluated as to whether they are kept in the course? It sounds like the course is new. Are there any other procedures in place for this?
Yeah, I designed the course based on my research in child theology and the spiritual development of children, and then combining that with introduction to anthropology, which deals with the cross-cultural sensitivities they would need as missionaries. And so it's a new course, and it's a bit experimental, I suppose. And yet I find that the contributions the students are making are very, very valid, and sometimes even superior to the case studies you find in the textbook. And then we analyze their experiences and apply the principles of cultural anthropology to their experiences. And it's been a learning experience, an experiential learning experience for both myself and the students. It's been a real adventure for me to be invited to design a course. My assumption was that I would get to Evangel and they would say, here's a book, go teach this class, which would, in my mind, is the traditional approach. But they said, well, based on your dissertation, your experience, you could design a course. And you could include some anthropology, a little sociology, theology, and all of these things. And so I was excited about that, but I was unaware that open educational resources even existed. And so discovering that, along with all the work of designing a course, it just went hand in hand. It was just the best arrangement for me. So I don't know how to compare my experience with that of other professors, but I'm having a good time with the entire experience.
Okay, looks like we have another question here. What was the process that you used to build out your LibGuide? It's fantastic.
Yes, I should also mention that after I watched this documentary, The Business of Scholarship, I followed some of the key speakers that I met in this film on Twitter. So that's been like go-to place for professional development. This is where I got all the latest updates and developments and innovations that were events and publications in the open access world. It's been very, very beneficial. So I use some of the materials, I found them on Twitter. And I was just like, I was building it one thing at a time, and just watching what others were doing. I wouldn't have been able to create this LibGuide without the help of generosity of other librarians and academic people in the academia, professors. I've just shared some of the videos that I found that of course most of them are they're openly published. So I just benefited from this collaborative environment. It's just the sharing and collaboration among librarians. It's incredible. And so I make it open, available. Anybody can go and use it and for their own benefit.
Okay, great. We'll give it another minute or so just to see if anybody else has any questions. All right, I don't see any other questions. Well, thank you, Mark and Rumyana, and thank you all for attending this session. Please be sure to provide your feedback on the conference survey that will be emailed to you after the conference conclusion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.